There's a lot more to do with Illustrator when we start working with shapes. So in this video, we're going to focus on drawing shapes and how to alter them by different ways. So once you open up the L2 Drawing Shapes folder file, all right, it'll open into here and it'll look like this. It'll have sort of a red background for a little bit, and as we move to the side, it has some instructions as far as how to finish off and how to save for submission. All right, so we're going to come back over here. Again, remember you can use your hand tool to kind of move things around, and we can actually zoom in on areas, right, by clicking zoom, and we can come in by moving our scroller, the wheel on the mouse, up and out. All right, I'm going to start right up here in the top left. We've done a rounded rectangle, I think, before. You could choose a rounded rectangle. Let me get my stuff set up back here. So we've done a rounded rectangle, or we know that we can do one by just choosing rounded rectangle tool. But a feature that I'm going to show you as we get started is something that you can use on multiple shapes. And so we're going to start first by making a regular rectangle or square, and then I'll show you how to make the curvy sides. All right. Down here in the fill and stroke center, I'm going to ask you to put the stroke up on top and turn it off. We're going to go without an outline stroke for this drawing. All right, I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to come over here, and I'm already set for drawing a square. Remember, to make a perfect square, you can either wait for it to see this kind of a look, or as you're moving it, you can hold down Shift, right? And it begins to make it a perfect square for us. One of the things I wanted you to be able to see, and we'll zoom in just a little bit more here, if I can, and on these corners. You'll notice when I go to my selection tool, we can see different little images inside of the corners of our object. These are called widgets. widgets, widgets. And they show up in any shape that has a corner or a point to it. It allows us to alter the actual pointed corner into a curved one. Now look what happens when I hover my regular selection tool over the top of it. It allows me to, it shows a little arc underneath the tool. That means if I grab that now, look at that, all four corners begin to curved. Look at that, all four of them, all at the same time. Okay, so now what if I just wanted one corner to actually be curved? If I just want one corner, I'm going to click on that corner. And look how it changed to a really big white center with a band around the outside. And it looks different than the other three, right? This means that this particular corner has been selected. You can even see the little selection circle now as I hover over the top of that. And now when I drag it, only that corner is curved. Crazy? So you can select it as a whole, or you can select a singular corner widget to actually move. So again, they're all going to move together. If I click on this, then they're all going to go, right? But if I select just one by clicking on him and then dragging, only one is going to move. Very cool opportunity for changing things. The other thing I want to show you about changing shapes or altering them is through a very basic switch of tools. The current tool that we have is called the selection tool. And if I click on this object, you will see that it immediately has a box, a colored box. We're in sort of a lavender or blue-violet color here that goes all the way around the object. And it has anchor points at various spots. Definitely the corners. And in this case, it has middle anchor points in which I could then click and drag and elongate or change the width or the height of my actual rectangle or square, right? So I can pull on any of these. If I wanted to change more about this object, other than its width and its height, we know that if we hover over a corner and click, we can turn it at different angles. It even shows us the numerical angles in which we are currently spinning it, right? Okay. The other thing is the difference between a direct selection tool, this is this solid guy, and the selection tool is quite substantial. So for example, let's click on this direct selection tool. If you want to be direct for something, you go right in for the details. So the details for us in drawing on Illustrator are the anchor points. Notice how these are sort of blue, violet kind of colored right now. I'm not talking about the widgets on the inside. I'm talking about the little square anchor points around the edges. Everything drawn in Illustrator uses these anchor points. Now I could click on one of these anchor points, and so I have just done so. Notice how that one stayed dark and all the other anchor points on the corners turned to hollow. It means that they're not selected. Only this one is. So now that it's selected, I could move it to however I want it to be. Maybe I want some crazy angle. Okay. What if I want to come down here? I click and select this one. Now the other three are without selection, and I could come in and I could change into some crazy mid-century boomerang or chevron shape. Okay, so now I have completely adjusted what used to be a long rectangle by moving its details, its direct areas of anchors. I made a completely different shape. Okay, so look at this. The regular selection tool is chosen. Deselect here. When I click on this, you can see what we call its bounding box. It's holding this shape together, and it gives us those options again of moving the whole shape, changing the size of the whole shape. I could drag diagonally, okay? I could change just the width of it, make it more stubby, all right? So I have all of these changes that I can do to the whole shape by using the selection tool. By using the solid direct selection tool, it expects I'm going to come in and click on some anchor point and do something with it. Okay. It is expecting change, but you have to select the anchor point so that you can do something with it. If it is not selected, then nothing's going to happen for you. Click and then move. All right. So those are the two different ways to kind of work with our two selection formats. This creates the whole and moves the whole, changes the whole. This only changes individual anchor points or handles. And we'll talk about handles in a later date. Okay, so let's delete this guy. I'm going to delete. And for real now, we're going to make a rounded rectangle out of a regular square shape, right? So I'm going to click on the square shape. Let's come back to the beginning here. And we've got ourselves a square. I'm going to hold down Shift. There we go. Now I'm a constrained square. And I'm now going to be coming around and I'm going to use the selection tool to drag the widgets to a point where I can fit this object. It looks like it's just a little bit big. I'm going to hold down Shift while I drag it smaller. There, and now I'm fitting pretty much in with the rounded rectangle, sorry, the rounded square shape that's here. Okay, so moving down, let's back on out of here just a little bit. Back out. So I have a match there. The next one is come down and do your triangle. Now, reminder, triangle can come from a polygon. Remember, when we click on the shape tool, we're going to come down to polygon tool, and you can change this in two different ways, right? We saw this in the last video. This is already set for a triangle because I kind of was playing around with this earlier. Remember, I could add more sides to it to get back to the polygon sides, all right? Or I can do the down arrow, which gets me to this, right? The other way is to stop with the polygon, and then to come in with a little diamond slider and reduce the amount of sides to get your triangle. So either way is a doable process, right? Now we need to kind of spin this guy, spin him so that he's facing upright. Cool. And in case he's just a little bit too big, then that means you can always kind of move in on the sides a bit. We can move a little bit around on the top to kind of match the top. And then there we are, we're matching set. Okay, down here, we're going to look at how to kind of arrange things just slightly smaller. So again, I made this smaller up here from its top and its side anchor points. One other thing I'd like to show you is to kind of how to make both sides come in at the same time to shrink an object maybe a little bit faster. I'm going to copy this triangle what we just made, copy and drag down. What I'm trying to make is this triangular shape right here in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Alt basically means alternative. It's an alternative way to do something. So sometimes it's an opposite effect. Sometimes it's a time-saving effect. That's what this one is. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to bring in the side. Look at that. I grabbed one anchor point on the side with the regular selection tool, and by holding down Alt, it brings in the other side automatically at the same rate. Crazy. So now I'm going to move this guy up here. He's probably just a smidge too wide and a smidge too tall, but we can always bring that down a little bit more, right? And if we hold down Alt, we can kind of bring it in a little bit more, and there you have it. Cool. Now, at any point, if you wish to give a certain color to one of your objects, feel free to do a color. I'm going to click on this guy here, and you're welcome to do the same thing. Click on him, and let's just turn it into a different color. Let's make a blue for fun. All right, so this guy is now blue. What we also then are invited to do down here are to create two rectangle shapes. So that's easy enough. We'll come up here to the rectangle shape. We will, let's see, let's go back, and I'm going to make a different color of this one. Let's do something in the green family. We'll do something minty green. And we're going to draw ourselves a rectangle that fits right into that space. Lovely. Look at that. Okay. Now, I want you to notice something. Let's zoom in here on this little space just so that we can kind of get a little bit closer to our world. Notice what happened. I drew what shape first? The blue one, right? The next shape I drew was the green rectangle. There it is. What happened to it? Well, it put itself over the top of or stacked on top of the previous shape I drew. So every time you draw a shape, the next shape is going to be basically visible on top of the other shapes. Okay. You might like that, you might not. What if I want this triangle here to be on top of this one instead? I just happen to draw it first. Well, we can move that. We can click on this object. I'm going to hit my right click on my mouse, and I'm going all the way down to Arrange. Down under Arrange, you will see Bring to Front or Send to Back. I'm going to bring this triangle shape to the front. Look at there. And it brought it to the front. Because as we start to draw any shape, okay, the next shape is going to be stacking on top of the previous one. They kind of build on each other. So at times you will need to click on the object, right click to get to Arrange, and tell your shape what you want it to do. If you want it to go to the back, or if you want it to go to the front. Oh, come on, buddy. I want it to go to the front. Okay. So we can tell these shapes which way to arrange. From here, I'm going to draw a circle shape. Now, there's something interesting about a circle shape that we can utilize that's similar to what we did with the triangle. We can utilize the Alt key to draw a circle from the middle outward. Okay, so from its very center right here in the middle, we can draw a shape that's going to explode outward. So let me show you here. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and see how we see this little circle icon. I can drag and look, it is making a circle in the very center. Otherwise, when we draw a circle, we have to drag from one side to the other, like left to right, hold down our Shift key if we want a perfect circle, right, to draw. So normally, instead of dragging from left to right, like we do with rectangles and other things, you could actually make the circle come from the center area and build it outward, like that. Okay, so there's two different ways to draw the circle, right? You can draw it by dragging and clicking from the left down, or even the right down if you're a left-handed person, okay? Or you could actually do it from holding Alt and draw it from its center out, all right? There's two different interesting ways to kind of put a spin on drawing a circle. All right, down here one more time, make yourself one more rectangle, okay? So I'm going to come down here, make my final rectangle, and there I go. Okay, now what if this was going to be some kind of crazy hat or topper, and I want to make sure all of these shapes stay together and don't get separated? I'm going to use my selection tool to create a marquee. A marquee is a line or a square shape that gets drawn around a series of other objects that I have drawn. I could then move them all together because they are all selected together. Okay. A downfall is when I deselect, they're back to being individual shapes again. And what if I didn't mean to move what I just moved? Option. To keep things together so they don't get lost or separated, we can do a few different things. I'm going to bring my layers panel up here. I'm going to highlight with a marquee again to select all of those shapes. Now, another way to do this is also I could click on each shape, hold down the Shift key, and keep clicking, and it keeps adding to my overall selection. Sometimes dragging around all the objects you want isn't always possible because there might be other shapes in the way. So either hold down the Shift key and select a shape, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and holding the Shift key will make them all together, or drag a marquee around all of them at the same time. Now, what we're going into next is called grouping. I'm going to permanently, well, temper permanently, I don't know if this is a word or not. I'm going to group together these shapes for a while. So I'm going to hit the word group over in the properties panel. Okay, I'm going to deselect them. Now, select them one more time. Now they're all still grouped and selected no matter what we do. Okay, I can move these and they'll move all together. I can resize these and they'll resize together. I can turn these and they'll all turn together. Okay, now I can come back at some point and ungroup them over here so that they're back to individual pieces. That's totally doable. But what we're going to be working with next is on the next part of our document to the right. So I'm going to bring this back over here. Actually, let's double click and get our hand tool set. All right, so we made this crazy hat down here. Look at that. That belongs to a robot that's over here on the right-hand side. I'm inviting you to use your shape building skills that you have so far, things like using widgets to get rounded corners on some rectangles, making circles, either way, whether you drag and hold Shift, or if you hold Alt and you drag outwards from the center to make yourself some circles. Some reminders, right? When we hold down on the Alt key, check your object and drag it. That means you can make a copy. So I just made an immediate copy of this. Notice that it's going to need to be smaller. So that means I'll need to hold down the Shift key, make it a little bit smaller until it begins to kind of fit the area that I need. Okay, we're going to bring that guy down just a little bit. Ta-da! So here's where you turn in to finish the rest of this. Use the skills that we have so far. Again, altering shapes by moving anchor points or making things smaller by dragging them a little smaller, hold shift. Playing with widgets to round off corners. Marquee objects to kind of select multiple things if you need to resize or recolor. You can make the robot any color you wish. And don't forget that you can also use the right click. Sorry, we have to ungroup this guy. We can always use the right click. Come on, right click, arrange, and send an object to the back or to the front. It depends on what you want the look of your robot to be. So he already has dotted lines over here, so we could zoom in on him so you can see his details a lot better. But notice how some shapes might be on top of others. You see the sample guy up here. He does not have to stay all the same color, but I ask that you rebuild your robot over here on this document before you finish. Here's our instructions. Once the video instructions are completed, finish making the robot. Use the properties panel to your right to change the fill color of the circles and rectangles that you might need to be red or other colors. None of the shapes have outlines, so make sure your outline stroke is turned off in both places. Complete building the robot at the bottom with colors of shapes. You don't have to follow the white shapes requirement. Save this image as an Illustrator file, and we're going to save it also as a PDF. Okay. Here's how to do that. So AI is simple. We've done that before in our previous lesson where we do File, Save As, and we went to our graphic design folder in our Google Drive. We go into Lessons, and we want to make sure that we have our letters and our title properly. We're L2. We want our last name, Martin, and robot. It already says Adobe Illustrator AI. Save and click OK. To save a PDF, you're going to go File, Save As one more time. We have the name already written there, and because we were just in the Lessons folder, I can see at the top here, I'm in my Graphics Design 1 Lessons folder, but now I need to change the file type. This is the file type box. I'm going down one to Adobe PDF, and then click Save. So now you have save your two file types ready to go. Ask me if there's any questions on drawing shapes or using widgets, etc., and get started.